Hi from me, Romy Stach, and welcome back to another uplifting episode of Derech Eretz. Many artists today are deeply committed to creating work that addresses pressing social issues and changes the way we perceive the world. Their work meaningfully engages with issues of advocacy, justice, and community building. Rabbi Sam Thurgood looks at the role art plays within Judaism.
When we talk about art in Judaism, we need to think beyond creating works of art. Judaism has always seen, according to Rabbi Steinsaltz, our service of God itself as being art, the way in which we paint the picture of holiness in our lives. For example, putting the mezuzah on your door, the fact that you have the scroll which has within it the word of God on every doorpost as we walk in and as we walk out, the fact that we see it and touch it and recall the presence of God and His protection in our homes, that is art. The way in which we give charity, helping another person with all of the laws that surround it. Just like in painting, you have certain rules and laws around what creates a good composition. So too, when it comes to giving charity, there are rules around what makes that a piece of art in one's giving. And so too with so many areas of our lives and so much of our relationship with God and the holiness that we seek to create in the world, that should be done in an artful fashion. And therefore, the main focus of art in Jewish life has been artistic mitzvot, art in the commandments. And this goes back to what our sages said thousands of years ago when the Jewish people were crossing the Red Sea. They said, Ze Eli ve'anvehu. This is my God, and I will glorify Him. But that word also means, according to our sages in the Talmud, and I will beautify myself before Him. I will do the mitzvot in a beautiful way. And so the focus of art in Jewish life has not necessarily been what's hanging on your wall, but the way in which you live your life. So this idea of our lives of art, of beautifying ourselves before God in His service, has ramifications both in the way in which we do the ritual commandments, as well as the moral, social, interpersonal commandments. When it comes to the ritual commandments, for example, we look for hidur, beauty, as one of the requirements. For example, on the festival of Sukkot and Tabernacles, we take the lulav and etrog, the palm frond and the citron, and the idea is that those should be beautiful specimens of those fruits and plants. That in fact people look at them very carefully to make sure that all of the, everything there is perfect, that doesn't have any blemishes, that those items are physically perfect is something that we look for. And so too, when you are lighting Shabbat candles, buy beautiful candles that light nicely, that last long. You put them in nice candlesticks. Make that mitzvah a beautiful mitzvah. Perform that commandment in a beautiful way. But that beauty is not only about the ritual objects that we use in the service of God. It's also about the kind of people whom we are and the way in which we behave towards one another. As our sages said, just as God is compassionate, you must be compassionate. Just as God is gracious, you must be gracious. Just as God takes thought and pays attention to those who maybe are sometimes forgotten or overlooked, that's what we must do as well. So therefore we look to God not only as the commander, but as the source of beauty and as a role model of what it means to be a good, or in this sense, a morally beautiful person. And so all of these deeds in which we do to one another, way in which we treat one another, is also seen as part of this ongoing Jewish work of art. One of the most famous Jewish statements around art was made by Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak HaKohen Kook, the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of the state of Israel. He spent quite a lot of time in the London National Gallery and especially focusing on the works of Rembrandt. And he remarked to somebody that through Rembrandt's use of light, he believes that he can see the hidden light that God implanted within creation. Our sages tell us that when God created the world, He first said, "Let there be light," but then hid that light away for the righteous. And the rest of us only receive regular light. Concluded Rav Kook, I think Rembrandt must have been one of those righteous. He gained access to God's hidden light, and he was able to portray that in his art. And it's through Rav Kook that art is seen also as a way of connecting to holiness and connecting to the divine, to somehow portray the world that God sees, the world that is beyond our senses, onto the canvas.
The Goodman Gallery has a long history of offering artists a non-discriminatory space during the years of apartheid. Continuing and expanding on this legacy, today the Goodman Gallery works with artists who are contemporary, influential, and strive to shift perspectives and engender social transformation.
The Goodman Gallery is a very important gallery and has an incredible legacy. It was started by Linda Givon in 1966, and what resonated for me was the essence and the ethos of the DNA of the gallery and of the space. I'd been working with Linda Givon as an independent curator for a number of years, and I'd worked with a number of the artists in the stable as an independent curator and filmmaker, and it just felt like home. And so over the years, I've had the gallery now for 10 years, a number of people have actually asked me, well, why don't you change the name to, Goodman S's? But the truth is I think that the Goodman Gallery is an institution and that I'm just the custodian of the gallery for this time. And I think that the gallery, and hope that the gallery will continue as an institution for many, many decades past myself.
What's unique about the Goodman Gallery and why I feel at home there? You've got to feel that your intent is being honoured, that there's a place for your intent, that the kind of work that I do is respected there and advocated there. It is a gallery where the custodians, the owners and staff there really believe that art has some kind of social function.
The essence of who I am is that I'm really interested in affecting social change, and I think that I realized through my career and finding myself in my career, I realized that contemporary art and working with contemporary artists is an amazing way to affect social change and make a difference in society.
I think art is one of the ways in which we can think about our place in the world and our place in relation to other people, to social structures, to political structures, to the past, and to the future which we want to imagine. And art allows us to have that conversation with people, which is not journalism, which is not academic writing. Art allows us to think about this in a complex way. Usually, art invites us to think about what is the emotional and the spiritual component of that relationship to the outside world.
My work is quite social and political in nature and in its focus, and very deeply embedded within the social landscape of South Africa. And I'd say the turning point within my practice and that strong focus on sexualized and gendered violence within the country really came about when I first made a work that was quite close and personal to me, which is called Berenice, 10 to 28. And this particular work focuses on quite a personal story and experience. And this left a deep impression on me. And many years later, practicing as a young artist, I decided that I wanted to make a work that in some way remembered and commemorated Berenice. And my mother was quite key in this because she reminded me that these are real people, real stories, and there's quite a key critical ethical dimension to what I was proposing with this work, and to always bear that in mind, and how that would keep me self-reflexive and remind me to retain and to aspire towards keeping that ethical approach to what I do. And that was so key and pivotal in my life. And since then, my work is deeply commemorative in nature, and like I said, subject-centered, deals with very difficult subject matter, violence, pain, trauma. But this nature of violence doesn't only play out within the borders of South Africa or the continent of Africa, but throughout the rest of the world.
What makes one a great artist is really your soul, or the soul of the individual. It's a given that someone can paint or draw, but it's really about a consciousness, an intelligence, a and something that's real, that's not just manufactured or a one-hit wonder. It's people who are deeply passionate about what they are, what they're talking about and what, in terms of their works.
I'm interested in how history affects the now, the contemporary South Africa, because I believe we are where we are because of our past, and so we need to understand that. We need to, link these two so that we can have an informed direction in our life. When I went to pursue my career in photography at the Vaal University of Technology, so if, the Vaal University of Technology is not far from Sharpeville, so if we were given assignment, and Sharpeville would be there, and most of the time when I had my camera in Sharpeville, a lot of survivors from the Sharpeville would always want to tell me their stories. And I did a project, I remember I titled it My Heroes, because I felt that they are my heroes. Some of them have died because of what happened in 1960. The people of Sharpeville decided that we're tired of carrying the Dompas, and they demonstrated, they went to the police station and they were shot, and 69 people died. So now I felt that I needed to, to celebrate them in a way. And the most important part was to get the essence, to get their stories. And most of the survivors, they would bring the objects as the object that has trapped this trauma. But what about the trauma inheritance? So now it's a Sharpeville trauma. It's no more an individual trauma, a community trauma. So that with those objects being photographed in a white backdrop, it was more of that, as in the symbol of the community more than one individual person. Because of, like I've said, we have inherited that trauma from them. So in my process, the step of taking a photograph is the last step. And because of it captures the connection that we have. Because I believe when I'm having a conversation with someone, I'm giving a certain part of myself, and then he's also doing that. And I use the camera to capture that.
You'll find that most of the artists in the stable are incredibly committed and passionate to making a difference and to social change, and to, whether it's Gabrielle, who is, deeply committed to bringing to consciousness abuse of women and domestic violence into our conversations, that it's not just kind of put aside. I think too often we get on with our daily lives and carry on with what we need to. But I think art and contemporary art gives one a moment to pause and reflect on very serious issues.
I did two bodies of work. One is about love and one is about land. And sometimes they intersect, sometimes they come together, and sometimes they're very apart. And when you use the word love, you think love is a pure word, an innocent word, and it is. It retains that meaning. But love is never uncontested. Some love is allowed, some love is prescribed. Fortunately, now we live in a country where there's a constitution which enables anybody to love as they choose. But as a gay man living in this country, for much of my life, my love was illegal. And that is still the situation for many gay people across the world. So my current series of work about love concerns the plight of people in many parts of the world, but mainly in Syria and Iraq, where ISIS was identifying gay people and murdering them. And of course, these men were never named. Their families could not claim them because the families are guilty by association. So all the rituals we think of as being the appropriate ways to signify death and to mourn and to grieve were denied to these people and to these families. So I've made memorials to these people who are unnamed and unnameable, basically. These are tributes to them in the absence of any other commemoration of their deaths.
Art does carry a particular kind of potential that's different to the work of advocacy or social justice, that may have its own limitations, where art can transcend those limitations. Language may fail us. Art can help us work through that sometimes. It provides us with the means of different kinds of means of working through those things in ways that is quite special and unique to art and all forms of art.
So for me, Derech Eretz means kindness, it means consciousness, it means making a difference in society and working together to do that.
Arlene Amela Raviv's artistic trajectory spans 4 decades of dedication and prolific output, with numerous exhibitions in South Africa and internationally. Arlene is a painter of the human condition, tracking the movement of displacements, transitions, and relocations of people. This she does with extreme insight, sensitivity, and compassion.
The passion of art for me started amazingly when I was 4. My very first school report I still have, and it says, Arlene loves standing at the easel and painting more than anything. And I've always drawn and always painted, always. That's my life. Louise Bourgeois said something about one paints in order to avoid insanity. And I paint just to keep myself stable and balanced and passionate. It makes me passionate to do that. The journey began, I'd say, in 1979 with an amazing exhibition that I had of portraits of the people I know. And I concentrated only on people I knew in order to get my emotions going with my paint mark. And that exhibition grounded me in my passion for moving forward, so that every year of my life for the last 40 years, I have had an exhibition of almost 40 or 50 paintings because I'm really a prolific artist.
When I first met Arlene and saw her work, I was absolutely fascinated because I think there are 2 kinds of artists. There's the one who paints for a career or to make a living out of art, and then there's somebody who, or artists who just paint from the heart, an emotional painter. So they're driven by only one thing, is to get out whatever it is that's inside of them, their passion, their anger, their frustrations, all that kind of stuff. So to me, it was like the real deal.
Whilst being and painting and going into the art gallery where we had studios, downtown in Troy Street, Johannesburg, I took a photograph of, scrawled on a wall in N Street, just in an outline, a running figure, and underneath it said Zulu. And it was a moment in my life where I just thought of this running man, which I've been painting ever since, this walking man. And whilst I shot that, a man walked past, and I didn't see him through my lens, but he walked past at that moment, and when the photographs were printed, this gentleman, this beautiful African dignified man, began, my whole work began from that man.
The viewer is an indulgence, really. I don't think Arlene actually gives too much fuss to whether somebody buys a picture or doesn't. It's not what's important. It's more important that they get the picture. And I think that she's driven by a voice in her head that says, I need to. It's to find the vehicle with which to take that to the next step. The walking man, as I would call it, has a real sort of pathos. It kind of gets you out there, and it stands out, and it has a feeling of forwardness, of being in control.
In 96, 97, I was invited to do an exhibition for Heritage Day, which was about District 6. So from Johannesburg and the street, I moved to Cape Town because I was really concerned as what would I paint when I got here. And I sat in the studio for about 4 months and painted portraits, portraits. I did 299 portraits, and then I cut off the timing. And I did them on linoleum, on the floor tiles. And I cut these rolls of linoleum with all different patterns and designs, and painted these portraits of all the people that were removed from District 6, labeled each one up to 299, and took from the post office 299 telephone directories in order to explain the way that the people were removed from their own land. And I set the 299 directories, I piled them up, and they opened, and the pages flowed like that, and they made a rustling sound. And from that I gained the experience and the understanding that I can paint more about the social complexities of our country. And I think that that was the very first project that I did besides my Walking Man, where I could feel what I needed to paint was a bigger picture than what I had been painting for all those years.
As long as the artist is true to themselves, nobody else, doesn't matter, nobody else matters. If you look at somebody like Arlene's work and you say she's constant, she doesn't fluctuate, her content fluctuates, her conversation fluctuates. So it should be, of course, you know. She's had a long career so far, and I'm excited to see where we go from here, where she goes.
My work has always reflected in a socio-political way the events that are happening, so that I can relate through my paintings a document of what has occurred in my lifetime and in the lifetime of others. The word Derech Eretz for me conjures up a very beautiful meaning of the ownership of land, which then leads to the ownership of a home, which leads to a roof over one's head, a right to education. And Derech, the pathway, is almost like the pathway of my work, from the intimate place where I was as a mother with my children, to opening up my heart to what I see and feel around me. And Eretz, whether it's the land of whichever land it is, whichever country it is a very strong, powerful, rooted word. So the roots of myself in this country is what I paint.
Philanthropist Victor Pinchuk said, "Art, freedom and creativity will change society faster than politics." We would love you to be part of the conversation, so share your views and stories on our Facebook page at Derech Eretz Connect. From me, Romy Stach, and the Derech Eretz team, remember, art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time.